Hello everybody, my name's Tom. This is the, first and only video at the moment that I'm going to make of these, and hopefully maybe if enough people like them and watch them and subscribe, then I may make more, because this is something I like to do with or without a camera, and that is just come out and see what I can find and see what I can see. It's something I find a lot of solace in. Because we don't have lions, because we don't have giraffes or crocodiles or anything exotic or fantastical that you see on the TV, that you see on planet Earth too, just because we don't have that doesn't mean that our wildlife isn't any less beautiful and any less magnificent to look at and to find out about. So that's what I'm going to try and bring to this video, and maybe even to the series. And so what I'm going to do is be having a look at the wildlife like that, even the more boring side of wildlife that you think maybe something as humble as a woodlouse you'd think is boring, but looking closer at that world, you'll see, hopefully through myself and through my passion for this, that it's anything but. Now today I've come somewhere where I come quite a lot, you know, just to be, and mainly to watch the wildlife and look for the wildlife. And that's Whitehawk Hill, just nestled above Brighton. It's quite close to where I live. And it varied habitat really, but one of the main habitats that we're just going to quickly talk about, something I want to point out, is actually kind of a man-made habitat. It's called chalk grassland. And it's done with a lot of help by the help of my friend here, making all the noise, interrupting the filming. Can you see him just behind me there? It's actually that little guy there and all our friends here that are actually a very, very strong factor in this habitat. Now centuries back, they always used to graze these hills, because right below us in the valleys there and here, there used to be lots of farmland, lots of cornfields all around the place. And obviously they didn't have things like fertilizer, industrial farming techniques back then, so they had to make do. So what they did is they used to keep the sheep grazing up on these hills where the soil was much less fertile. The soil we have down here is much more fertile, and therefore this is where they grow the crops. And every evening the shepherd would bring the sheep down into the valley, where their dung would actually manure the crops, ready for the crop for next year. Now this is absolutely fascinating stuff, because of what it's created is a very unique habitat to this area, the chalk downland, as we've been looking at today. Little brief history on the grazing techniques they have up here. You can look at Brighton Hove City Council's website if you want to find out a little bit more. I'll leave the link just below. But for now, as I said, my trusty net and my couple of other things, we're going to go have a look and see what we can find today. Okay, so we officially have our first animal. I've been walking through the grass, so it was inevitable that I was going to hear, and if I was fast enough, maybe find one of these little guys. Now this in particular is a common field grasshopper. You'll find many of these around. It's probably what you most likely see when you see and or hear a grasshopper in this country. It'll be one of these guys. Now they only grow to about 2.5 centimeters long. This is a young one still. It's still shedding off its younger skins at this point. It more than likely would have been born this year. What actually happens is the female will lay a pod of these under the ground at about 15 to 20 eggs. And then later you'll get loads and loads of baby nymph grasshoppers. So basically wingless versions of the adults. And these things will be prolific all the way through summer. Something quite interesting about the field grasshopper, and really all grasshoppers for that matter, is they don't actually hop an awful lot despite their name. The hopping is merely a defense mechanism, but when they do it, it is pretty darn impressive. These animals are actually capable of jumping just over 1 meter. Which isn't bad for an animal that is which is literally half the size of my little finger, which is quite impressive. So we're going to see if we can get a jump out of this little guy. See if we can get him to, we're going to release him now. See if we can get a little jump out of him. There he goes. Believe it or not, that just went straight over my leg, and if you can see it, that guy just jumped all the way over my leg. It's there from that thing. That's just about a metre. Pretty impressive. Field grasshopper, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as I was walking through here, I spotted something that I find quite interesting, and hopefully you all will too. Happened upon quite a large amount of bird feathers scattered over a relatively small area. And what I've concluded from this is that it is more than likely some sort of wildlife food prep station, if you will. And what's happened here is a predator such as a fox or any kind of bird of prey has brought its quarry here, its prey, and proceeded to remove its feathers. But from the lack of feathers in the area, I would imagine it actually got disturbed in prepping its food and had to move off of its quarry elsewhere in order to continue removing the feathers at its own leisure. Something I really find interesting about things like this is the same way that a lot of naturalists find poo really fascinating is it leaves a trace, it tells a story. In this case, it is definitely a story that didn't end well for one animal. Now, do we hear this? That is grasshoppers talking to each other. But I think what I can actually hear, if I know my grasshopper calls well enough, I hope I do, this is actually lots of male grasshoppers all staking claim. So they'll all sit there and they'll find their areas, and it is basically my patch. This is where I want my women to come. Any other boys in here, there'll be trouble. And this is basically lots of male grasshoppers trying to out-chirp each other. It's kind of like West Street on a Friday night. Now, before we move off the chalk downland, I just wanted to point out something absolutely incredible about it. Now, one thing that does come from all this grazing is it's really, really good for wildflowers to come up, for the natural growth of wildflowers to come up. And of course, what follows closely behind flowers, and they couldn't survive as that, is of course the insects, particularly butterflies. Actually, there are a few species of butterflies that you can only really find on chalk downlands like the ones you get in Sussex. This is why these chalk downlands are so important to protect. Since industrial farming techniques actually came in, things like artificial fertilizers came in, since that happened, 97% of these chalk downlands has disappeared. And so to protect the remaining 3%, they've actually brought back this grazing actively to the area. Hopefully we'll find a blue or one of the family of blue butterflies, but who knows. Now, I did eventually come across some butterflies. These, however, are fairly common. You can find them quite a lot of places right across the UK. You might have even spotted one yourself, more than likely. These are cabbage white butterflies. And that unfortunate individual lying on its back in the middle with its abdomen in the air is the female. Now, you'd think initially that upon appearances, lying on your back with your abdomen in the air is a fairly welcoming gesture for most animals. But with cabbage white butterflies, it's anything but. This female is basically signaling to the male that he shouldn't waste his energy because she's already mated with. But not unlike quite a few guys I know, he's not taking no for an answer. Now, she will eventually get away. And hopefully she'll get to lay her eggs. Off she goes. Okay, so what we have here is a moth. Beautiful little moth. And I'm not sure if you can quite see. This little guy's actually vibrating his wings. Now, this is something moths really only do late afternoon, early evening. It's about that now. And when you see them shaking their wings like this, it's basically the equivalent of a jogger doing stretches. He's just warming up. Not quite sure what species this is. Now, these flowers here are extremely common all across the Sussex Downs and in this sort of chalk downland habitat where the soil is very thin and much less fertile. They're called common toad flax. These things are everywhere along the downs, and of course the butterflies absolutely love them. This is the sort of result that we want from this grazing. It's brilliant. Another lovely species of wildflower. This particular one is kind of dead nettle. It's called betony, and I think it's just wonderful. I love living around here. There's not many of them now, you can see. You can see a couple of spots of purple on top. These are called rose bay willow herb. Sure, some of the Americans amongst you probably know it as fireweed, like this little fellow here. Little common honeybee. Oh, quick. There he is. Off he goes. Rose bay willow herb is one of my favourite wildflowers simply because of the abundance that it grows in. And earlier in the summer, this whole hillside, nearly this whole hillside is just glowing purple. And you can see it all the way across. From all the way across there to all the way back here again. And it's so good for the bees. And as everyone keeps being told, bees are definitely on a decline. And it's sites like this that definitely lift your spirits for their future. Now, you have to excuse the nature geekiness, but this is really exciting. I was kind of hoping my venture out into the meadows that I was going to come across one of these while I was filming. But that is a very, very large ant mound coming out of there. Possibly might be able to get a look at the residents. Now, I don't really want to disturb them that much. Now, it's always okay to observe an ant nest like this. If you wanted to have a look and disturb it a little bit, just so you can see what's going on here, but if we just dig away here. Now, what these look like to me are yellow meadow ants. Most definitely. Look at, there's one. Can you see one there? Absolutely brilliant. Now, if you want to talk top predators, look no further. We have one here. It's a common brown centipede. Only about 2 centimeters long. Not very threatening to your eye, but to a woodlouse, to an ant, to any other small bug in your garden, this thing is the lion. Just at the front there, and as I'm sure most of you are aware, they have quite a formidable pair of venomous pincers. Now, these things tend to grow about 3 centimeters long, and that's as big as they get. But still, nonetheless, such an impressive animal. Okay then, so I think the sun's just about to go down. There's not anything too amazingly exciting out there in these woods, but as you can see by the grasshopper, the butterfly, and our lion of the undergrowth, the centipede, as you can see by those, it's not all as it seems at face value at first. Now, hopefully I'll get to make more of these. This is just something I thought I'd try out. Maybe I'll find something on my way down the hill, but for now, hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, then please subscribe.